Ollie was called in to find a stolen gold bar. Now, gold is really valuable, really expensive. I'm going to put the toy down. You. Thank you. And heavy as well. And so a bar of gold about the size, half the size of a brick, is worth like, I don't even know, thousands of dollars. A lot of money. And that's what was stolen. The bar had been on display at a bank nearby. And just midway through the afternoon one day, someone noticed that the bar was gone. It was very mysterious how the person had, however, gotten it, because it was up high on this pedestal. A lot of people assumed that it was fake, but it was actually real. And because it was up high, people didn't notice it gone. They're not sure when it disappeared. So there are no leads there. But they did have a lead. See, the police had gotten information that the gold bar was taken by somebody that worked at a local bakery. They had gotten an informant who had said that they had seen somebody carrying the gold bar, excuse me, from a car into the bakery. They'd caught it. They'd noticed that it was strange. They'd called it in. But when they searched the place, they came up with nothing. So that's when they called Ollie in. So Ollie walked into the bakery, and the police were there. The bakers were there, and they were all looking nervous. Now, were they nervous because they were all in on the theft? Or were they nervous because their normally quiet bakery was full of police officers and now a private eye who was also an octopus? Impossible to say. So in this case, their nerves provided no clue. I started off by asking the head baker there. I said, "Hey, my name's Ollie. I'm here to help with the investigation." And the head baker said, "Okay, hi. I mean, listen, I don't think the gold bar is here. Maybe the lady was mistaken. I'm not sure. But you're welcome to search some more. I'm just going to ask that you try not to destroy too much of our merchandise because, you know, a whole day's worth of... We're already looking at most of the day of lost sales. To also lose a bunch of merchandise at the same time, a bunch of baked goods destroyed, that would be very hard." I said, "Okay, well, tell me what you've done so far." So, well, the police searched the whole place, up and down, looked in all the cabinets and all the drawers underneath the things, in the ovens, all the places that anybody could think of to hide it. I mean, I made some suggestions, but the police went off on their own and just did some searching. And then we have this tool. It's like a metal poker, and you can use it to poke into things and see if they're baked through. And so one of the officers was very kind, but they very carefully, with some instruction from me, poked into a bunch of the cakes and things. The cakes especially, to make sure that, they felt like cake and didn't have a metal bar in the middle. I said, okay. Interesting. And nothing. Ollie confirmed all this with the detective that was working on the case. He said, "Ollie, it's got to be here somewhere. I trust this informant. I don't know why exactly, but I've got a good feeling about them. It's got to be here." Ollie said, "Is there a back entrance?" I said, No, it's an unusual shop, but it backs onto another property. In the back, there's no back entrance. It's unusual for a commercial property, but that's the way this one is. Well, excuse me. Let me get looking around. One of the reasons that Ollie is sometimes really handy to have when something needs finding is that he's much lower down to the ground, so he sees angles and things that other people might not see. And he's a good climber, so he can get up higher than people normally get. I started off with the former. Ollie first noticed that there were some heat registers, like for the heat and AC units. So Ollie has to borrow a screwdriver and spun the screws off and looked inside, but there's nothing. He even crawled inside with a flashlight and followed around inside the ducts. But there's no gold bars. He looked around other places on the floor. He checked under some cabinets, but there was nothing. And the place was clean. The place was immaculate, which a bakery is supposed to be. And I started looking up. I looked up. And there wasn't much on the top shelves. Ollie climbed up to see if there was something at a different angle. And he looked all around and couldn't see anything that was out of place. I was looking around, back on the ground. Oh, excuse me. Looking around, searching, trying to figure out what it could be. And he bumped into a rack that had a bunch of loaves of bread on it. And didn't move. And I thought that was a little strange, because it was a wire rack. It shouldn't have been very heavy. It just had bread on it. That shouldn't have been very heavy. Ollie isn't usually clumsy, but that particular moment he was. He would have expected the cart to shift. But it didn't. So he started taking a closer look. On the cart were about 15 loaves of bread. 3 rows of 5. All roughly the same. Handmade sandwich bread. I looked very, very carefully. And then he noticed something. All of them were pre-sliced. But one of them seemed to have way more crumbs in the bag than the others. As he started to reach for it, one of the assistant bakers got visibly nervous. Well, he grabbed the bag and he pulled on it. It was heavy. It was much heavier than a loaf of bread ought to be. So he got 2 tentacles and lifted it. And man, that was the heaviest loaf of bread Ollie had ever seen. And in a moment of dramatic flair, Ollie held it up and dropped it on the ground, and it hit the ground with a clank. Quickly, the officers came over. The detective said, "Is that it?" They opened up the bag, and inside the bag, they could now see the gold bar. And there it was. Whoever had done it had taken the loaf of bread out, taken the back, like the heel, and a couple of slices after the heel, off of both ends, and then cut a secret hiding chamber into the bread, into the other slices of bread, slipped the gold bar back in there, and then reassembled it. It had been a clever job. They hadn't done a good enough job of cleaning up the crumbs. And now they were busted. And what's more, the owner piped up immediately. Said, "Mitchell, get out here." And a nervous, tall, lanky guy named Mitchell came out and said, "Sir, officers, I think you better arrest Mitchell here. He's the only one that handled the bread in the times that mattered. I think if you look pretty carefully, you're going to find Mitchell's fingerprints all over that bag, maybe all over that gold bar. And Mitchell said, fine, 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 fine. He put his hands out to be handcuffed. I said, how did you know? To Ollie. And I said, well, bread's supposed to be light and airy. And a professional bakery should have nice, clean packages. So it was the packages that gave you away. The owner was so relieved that it was over. The police had some more questions, but they were going to leave. He could get back to making his cakes and his breads. I said, Ollie, I really appreciate what you did. Let me give you something. He made Ollie a nice cup of coffee and gave him one of the best muffins Ollie had ever had. And said, come back anytime. And I'll give you the employee discount. And that was the case of Ollie and the stolen gold bar.